think I'll get started. One, I very much appreciate everybody participating. I know I arm twisted some of you. I regard this as actually important for you. We try not to have trivial things in these events. We try to tell you stuff that will really be helpful to you in taking care of our students and advancing your career here, in knowing whom to call if you have a problem that comes up. Some of this you can sort of pick up along the way, you can ask somebody, but we want to tell you so you don't have to go through that exercise. The other thing that actually I think is pretty important is that, frankly, particularly for our faculty who are off campus or who don't teach most of the time on traditional campus programs, it's very easy to get siloed, not feel a part of things, and or even if you're on campus, and as one of our faculty members once said when we were talking about the university perspective, my university perspective is the guys in my corridor. I hope you build strong relationships with the guys in your corridor, but at the same time, we need the opportunity to have a broader perspective. So the other reason is just to get a diverse group together and give you all the opportunity to meet each other and hear each other's perspectives on some of the issues that get raised. And I will tell you also that the folks who come and present take this very seriously. They want to welcome you into our community of learners. They put out effort to put their presentations together, and frankly, by the end of last year, when not many people bothered to show up, I was disappointed in the lack of regard for the colleagues of the new faculty who didn't think they had anything worth saying. So they have things worth saying. We've tried to arrange things this year so that they're in an order which makes sense. So for example, we will, the next session, we will be spending time on the merit plan and how you get advanced and how you make more money and useful things like that. And we're trying to do that timely because you have the opportunity to turn in your merit plan in February. And I want you to know how to do that so you can succeed in it. Today, we have 3 presenters scheduled. I'm not sure who's coming first. I don't know if Amanda indicated. But we have 2 topics for today. One is has to do with supporting students. I mean, first and foremost, we are a teaching institution. Our priority is our students. We are a student-focused institution. And we want to do what is helpful and necessary to engage our students and enable them to succeed. That's the whole purpose of Spring Arbor University. So we have 2 people coming in to talk. The first is Willie Lewis, who directs a program called ASK, which is Academic Student Connections, which is literally through that wall. ASK is a tutoring service, a support service. They run what in some other institutions are called remediation courses. If we get students we're delighted to have, who nonetheless come in with some deficiencies in their preparation, Willie's area offers the courses that will enable them to get up to speed so that they can continue to be successful. The other thing that is, well, there are 2 other things that are notable that Willie takes care of. One is he is responsible for all of the ADA issues. So that if a student comes in with a medical or other legitimate opportunity and reason for being treated a little differently in class, taking a little bit more time with assignments and that sort of thing, Willie vets that. He understands the federal and state requirements to collect the information about the specifics of the medical condition, whatever it is, things that everybody doesn't need to know. And as a result of that, what is developed, I'm explaining the visa for 2 seconds. You will do a better job of that in 2 seconds. Yeah. But he gives you guidance as to the latitude that's available for students. So you don't have to make it up, and you don't have to believe the student. Both things come in. And thirdly, he is responsible for bringing us Avid, which he will talk to us about. So Willie is a very, very important part of our enablement to allow our students to succeed. We're going to have a short presentation by Laura Breckner on the early alert system, which is a very important part of our being able to serve students. If you have a student who is having problems, we want to know about it early. Because there are all sorts of folk who can come around that student and find out what's going on. It isn't necessarily an inability to cope with the material. There might be things going on physically, there might be things going on in the person's life, there might be financial things, there might be all sorts of things. And we have a variety of folk who will come around that student to help solve the problem if they know there's a problem, and ideally if we know it early enough so we can turn the situation around so the student succeeds. So those are the two folks who are going to talk initially about how we serve our students best. And then we will have Tom Holsinger-Friesen, whom I'll introduce later, who's going to come and talk about broadly what we're trying to accomplish as a liberal arts institution so that you can see your place in that. Whether you're in a professional program or a graduate program, what does it mean that you're part of a liberal arts institution? So I will turn it over to Willie.
Sure.
Introduce yourself and tell people what you're telling us.
I understand.
You can come here so Camille can see you.
Okay.
Okay?
Fantastic. I am, hello. I will send you whatever information that we're sharing here so that you can have a copy of it. My name is Willie Lewis. Some of you I know very well. Some of you I know somewhat, and we're getting there. Good, that's for you. This is what I'm handing out is just a brief flyer that that gives a thumbnail version of what the Academic Student Connections office is, what it is and what it's designed to do. The office itself was established as an academic support area for our campus, and we've also joined together the academic support office with our ADA compliance office from the student support side. And so our office handles all of the academic supports for students from the accommodations in all the way through to a student needing help just trying to get through a particular course. And we feel like it's the best place to have both of those two entities so that it lowers the barriers for students when they might need to come into the office if they have a particular disability that needs accommodating, because it makes our office the place that all students then visit rather than just a subset of our population which may carry some form of stigma that they have to then sort of work through. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is the visa process, which is it is the verification document that we create on our campus. And the way that works is that a student will report to our office that they have some form of disability, either visible disability or one that's hidden. And so in those two silos, sometimes we see students that might have, let's say for instance, a student that is suffering from hearing loss. So that student that's pretty visible, we can see that. And then we have other students that have issues that are behind the scenes, sort of, for instance, dyslexia, that you can't see that visibly, that student is struggling with a print disability. And so our office will then ask for some form of documentation. And what we put a limit on is to say it needs to come from a professional. We are looking for medical documentation, psych evals, some way of an expert validating that these particular issues that a student has are documentable, I guess is the best way to say it. And we also put a 5-year limit on it so that if a student has a disability that was documented outside the 5-year window, we ask that they go and have themselves tested or pick up some sort of secondary documentation that way. What we particularly will use most often is an IEP from a student from their high school years, or a 504 plan, which is created, and then within the public, that's within the public school, and in the private schools they have a different sort of set of documents that's created, especially within the Christian school network. They have another set, but they essentially operate the same way, which is that a team of professionals have validated that this student has a particular set of accommodations. Now, the thing about those accommodations that's important from from your understanding is that that not all accommodations transfer from their high school experience or their public school or secondary experience to our level. There is a caveat within the ADA compliance or the ADA rulings, and that caveat is that it cannot change the expectations of the institution for the sake of the student. So in other words, we want to level the playing field on behalf of the students, but we cannot disadvantage other students, nor are we to put ourselves in a position where one student is receiving a degree that looks vastly different than another. So that's important that we keep that distinction that across all platforms and for all students, a degree in mathematics is the same for all students. And so what we then do is we take all of that information in and I will evaluate whether or not the student's documentation is valid, and then I will create a visa. And that visa is a document that we then hand to the students. It's called a visa because it's the verified individual student accommodations form. It's not the same as the visa that they need to go on their cross-cultural trip. That's a different document. So the visa itself will then is available for students to pick up, and unlike high school or in middle schools or at the secondary level, all of the accommodations are handled behind the scenes without the students' sort of input in a lot of ways. And so what happens with us is that they are now adults, and so we give the visa to the student. And it's their job to then report their accommodations through that form to you all, to the faculty and to their instructors. It's important for you to recognize when they hand that document over, that then triggers your obligation to follow through on those accommodations. Now, they do have the flexibility to say, for instance, if we have a student that has an alternative testing environment is what their accommodations might call for. If the student says, I really would like to stay in the classroom, you're not to force them out of the room because the document says so. What you are required to do is make sure that they are able and willing to have that alternative setting available to them. Now, if they so choose to sit in the room for test number 2 and they decide that test number 3 is, I better go back to the alternative environment, the accommodations remain in place. So you're not to then turn off the spigot, so to speak, and keep them from having access to what their accommodations are. So we really give them ownership over their accommodations in this process because we want them to feel like they are growing as a student as they go along as well. Often you'll see the most common accommodations that we have on campus are extra time on tests and extra alternative testing environment, and then we have a number of students that receive digital text, and what that means is that we take their current textbook and make it into a PDF, and then that PDF can then be read aloud to them using some platforms that we have on campus. What we don't provide is audiobooks. We just provide a means for them to have a PDF reader read it in this computerized voice. So you'll see quite often, you'll get, what we ask the students to do is to approach you in the first couple of days of class, and they will hand you their visa along with the rest of the students on campus that are passing out schedules, their sports schedules and things like that, because we want them to feel like this is not some set aside moment, it's just part of the process of what students have to deal with. One special note when it comes to students with disabilities is that it is not your job to diagnose nor fish for student disabilities. It is important for you to know that. We can get ourselves in a litigious situation very quickly if you are guessing at what a student's particular issues might be. So if you have a student that maybe is struggling in your English class or your math class or whatever course you're teaching, and you think they might be suffering or struggling because of a disability, the best option for you all is to couch getting support within the larger framework of the rest of the supports on campus. So for instance, you might say, as an example, I see you're struggling with class, you know that we have available to us the Academic Student Connections Office, which can then provide you with an opportunity to get tutors. You might be able to get yourself invested within a study group. There's an opportunity for you to maybe sit down and meet with the office with Willie Lewis and get some support that way. And they even have they have an opportunity for you if you have a documented disability that they can manage that, or if you have a need because of some opportunity for you to form your own cohort, they can help with managing that. And so the idea is to couch this need to get some support within the larger framework of what our office does and leave it at that. Do not go any further in that regard, because we can get ourselves in trouble. The office itself, we are designed to help students across the educational spectrum. And so if a student, the only group of students that we struggle with giving support to are seniors, because a lot of our supports are peer tutors that we provide for students, and we often see 400 level classes as a struggle because there's no peer that has already passed the class that is available to give that student support. But we try to go out of our way to figure out a way to support students. And often, if a student comes in and needs support from me, from our office, and they sit down with me and they're a senior, what I would do is direct them back to you as faculty members and to say, you need to utilize office hours to help get support in that realm. So we have this dual sort of role, which is academic supports, tutorings, study groups, and we even provide support for students with English as a second language as their when they come to our campus, because we do have students that are international that especially those that don't come from the Romanic languages have struggles with reading and comprehending the text that first couple of years, and so we provide support there. So we have the academic side, and then we have the ADA side, so we try to meld those together.
Willie, do you cover ADA for all of our students though, don't you?
Yes.
Site students as well, and online if it were to arise?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
We validate across the entire SAU universe.
Mhm.
Yep. So we see students, and if that's the case, if they're at a site, what we end up doing is having the site coordinator help to coordinate getting their documentation to us, and we get the documentation back to them, and then they hand out the visas to their instructors. So, or email them if they're in an online environment. Yes.
If we have a student in a class that says, or an office that comes and says they're struggling in class and it's because I have this disability and there has not been any accommodation or anything, if they specifically state it, self-identify, because you said don't go fishing for it or anything, but if they say to me, I've got, this issue, can I then say, well, you should probably go talk to Willie in the ADA?
That is the very best response you can have. If they self-identify some disability, it is in your best interest to then say, you need to go to see Willie Lewis in the Academic Student Connections Office, and set an appointment with this office to manage through all of the particulars that come with that.
Okay.
And we see that at the sites. We see that on campus, because what we find is that some students try to come to, especially freshmen, they will come on campus and they will avoid triggering in accommodations because they feel like they have made it, and so they won't access the supports that they think that we know that can help them to be successful until midterms, and then they'll say, well, I'm dyslexic. And so I'm struggling because I'm dyslexic, and they'll say, well, okay, let's go and get you set up with the office. Now, the thing is that we are not obligated to go back in time at that point and redress any of the mess ups that happened with that student early on. It's our role from that day forward to make sure that student gets the supports they need. But the stuff that happened previous to that is all water under the bridge, is the best way to put that. I'm trying to think, what questions might you have from the ADA perspective or from our office's perspective?
So I've had students come and they hand me their visa, and it's confusing for me because I don't know what accommodations that they need. So I just ask them, I said, well, what accommodations do you need? And then they'll just tell me. And so should I just take it at face value, what they tell me is their accommodations, or do I need to call you, or is it written on the
So
form?
it should be articulated in italics on the form,
Okay.
so that there's, because we don't want students, what we're trying to avoid is having you negotiate a student's disability between you and that student, right? Because what will happen is, one particular faculty will say no to a set of accommodations because of the structure of their course and the way that they see how education should be meted out. And then another will say yes because they have a level of understanding about disabilities, for instance. And then that student will say, well, I had a different experience in 2 different courses, and so something's not right with that, and they can then put us in a bind. And so to avoid that, our office then states very clearly, these are the accepted accommodations that every faculty has to give you. So as you read through there, we leave a space, and then again, it's italicized to make sure that it sort of stands out.
And on the form, does it say where to email exams or quizzes? Because
That's a great question. It should say that.
okay, I'll do
But
it.
that's something that everyone should know. Because we often see students that even if they don't have accommodations, if you've made arrangements with students to take an exam in our office because maybe they were missing class that day, you can email asc@arbor.edu, which is the call letters for our office, ASC. So anytime you want to email an exam, send it there because Amber will get it.
And you want directions as well, right?
Yep, and include the directions, please. Yeah.
And that's for any student that?
For any student that comes in.
Mrs. can come, you guys will. You guys are so nice.
Can you guys do nursing checkoffs?
Right.
Take a whole vacation.
So it's part of the whole, the testing center model or the testing center sort of package that we're putting together. Because we also test students that come on the campus and that are in need of getting extra credit. So our DSST students, they test out of our office as well. So people call it CLEPing out. We don't use CLEP here on campus, but it's essentially the same thing. And then if a student is trying to get more scholarship dollars or trying to get themselves above the threshold for enrollment, they can come to our office throughout the year and take the ACT with our office, and they can use that score to then validate their enrollment on campus. So we try to provide this the sort of testing environment for all students to be successful if they're here. So AVID. So I do need to speak a little bit about AVID. AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. So that's the long-winded version of it. And AVID serves our students on campus by providing our students with a framework for how to engage with our academic content. Now, we have set aside a special set of classes that we are targeting students, and those are the GES courses. So the student is enrolled based on their enrollment criteria. We might place them in a GES class. What we're seeing in the last 2 years is that some students are asking, based on their conversations with Katie and those guys, about taking the course. And so what those set of courses are they're set up to give students support either through reading, which is a GES 116 course, and then the GES 110 is for students that have a lower GPA, but it's a more full service course that touches on all of the areas that a student might engage with academic content, either through lecture, through reading, through testing, whatever the vehicle. So we give direct instruction for students there, but what AVID does from your guys' perspective is it also provides a way to match up what those students are learning there with your mode of instruction. So it provides a level of professional development for faculty, and it gives faculty a means to have a shared conversation about these same strategies. So the framework that's used is called WICR, and that stands for writing to learn strategies, using inquiry or using questions in the classroom setting, collaboration, organization and reading or critical reading. And so if you can imagine that the students are now learning how to use those 5 elements, the writing, the inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading, to their benefit, and then faculty are then using those in the classroom, we have we end up with a match in terms of how students are engaging with the content and how faculty are discussing content with students and what they're doing to frame the instructional strategies within the classroom environment actually gives our students a leg up in terms of understanding and in their mastery of content over the course of their careers. The last couple of years we've seen this growth in Avid. I was saying this summer we ended up with close to 40 faculty in the spring that came on campus and did professional development, and then we did another session in the fall, just at the beginning of the school year, and some of you were there. And in those 2 sessions, we ended up with close to 40 faculty in both on certain days. And our very first session that we hosted, we had 2 faculty. So we've gone from this sort of small little program to faculty really engage with this idea of professional learning opportunities to think deeply about the craft of teaching. And so our office is the Avid for Higher Education office. We have two sort of veins that we operate in, and one is providing support for you all. And if you are trying to think of ways to engage the students, we have the materials and the resources in our office that's housed on my shelf in the office, and some of you I've talked to, and I'll pull off something and we'll talk about different ways to engage with faculty, with students, and I'll bring those resources to bear upon your request. So if you have any thoughts about how do I get students to talk in the classroom, well, we'll pull out some collaborative tools and walk through some ways that we can manage that within your own subject area. And it crosses it doesn't matter the content area or the discipline. We can figure out a way to sort of give you some support there. The other way that we're offering up support is that our education department is now Avid for Higher Education for all of our pre-service teachers. So they will all learn this Wicker Avid framework. So when they go off into the wider world, they will be armed with these same strategies so that they can use them they can use them in the classrooms that they're going to walk into. So most of our tutors, and that's the other piece, all of our tutors have been trained to use Wicker as well. So anytime that you send a tutor to our office, they are trained on the Avid methodology so that instead of telling students the answers to questions, they engage them in a Socratic conversation. I think the conversation is about asking questions of the students to mediate their thinking, to get them to understand, and they will use writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, reading strategies as often as they can to push students to think deeply about what they're doing in those tutoring sessions. So.
And in the Community of Learners 100, the freshman course, the students are introduced to all of these techniques, or not all of them, but a selection.
A selection, right. They've made a concerted effort to decide, to figure out which ones would land best for all students, and one of them is using Cornell Notes in all of the Core 100, the philosophical chair conversations that they're having. So students are well engaged and well informed, and at least there. The goal is to get the rest of the campus to sort of permeate these ideas so that students, what they see in Core 100, they begin to see the roots of that, of Wicker there, but then they can see it growing out into their 200 and 300 level courses, and it just becomes a part of how we engage with students in the presence of content.
Avid was originally developed for high schools. Willie, would you share 10 seconds on your experience with Albion High School?
Right. 10 seconds. So Albion High School took on Avid when I first moved out of the classroom. When I was the district director. They went from with the use of Avid, our ACT scores went from 16.2 to 19.1 in a 2-year span by using Wicker strategies. Wow. We had others, and this is, and I have to use this because I have to use this caveat. Well, not really a caveat. We tested all students. I'm going to say that because often you see these types of jumps, and what districts have done is they've hid certain students. No, we tested 100% of our students and each time we taught them. So first year 16-2, second year 19-1, third year 19-2, and then Albion closed and I came here. So it's unfortunate. So I'm not bitter about that. So Avid is here for your use. It's the resources that are in my office are there for you all. If you are cozy with the education department, they have another set in their office too, so you can sneak in their office and borrow and steal and talk to them about the use of those strategies as well. So if you are ever in need, you can give me a call and set up a time and we can sit down. And I'd love to eat lunch with anyone. I love lunch. So yes.
What about technology? I mean, there's all these apps and all these different things that are coming out. Can you guys help us kind of learn some of the new technology that's out there?
As a matter of fact, and I should have mentioned this before, when in the adaptive technology realm, with our office, we offer up, it begins with our students with disabilities, but what we do is we end up, what's good for students with disabilities often we find can be useful for everyone. And so our office, we lend out about 15 smart pens a year, and those are pens that record audio as they write and embeds it ties the audio to the written text on the page. And so a student can always go back and reference what was said by the use of that pen by tapping the text, and it'll play the audio from that moment when they tapped on, or from the moment that they wrote that particular line of text. What we also have is a note-taking platform that we've invested some time and effort into. It's a pilot. It's called Sonaset, and what it is we're actually targeting the nursing program, and so all of the incoming freshmen have access to this platform, and it's a recording. It's the ability to record the lectures, but it also connects the lectures to the PowerPoints, and it you have to see it in work. I mean, you see it to believe it, but all of the audio is then tied to each of the slides. So a student can they can upload their slides afterwards, and the audio for slide 1 is connected to slide 1, and so on and so forth. And they can add their own text as they go along, and they can add their own images, and they can fill out the note-taking platform. But the really striking piece to all of that is that it's not a passive activity. So in most cases, you'll see students recording lectures by turning their phone on and then setting their phone on the table. With this platform, you have to designate the type of conversation that's happening. So you'll see on the side a key. So let's say this is test-worthy material, and that's in blue. And so all of the audio will be blue if it's test-worthy because you've indicated that. And then the next thing is, well, this is test review, or this is just lecture. So all of the lectures yellow. So then you can then manipulate it based on those colors. But we provide we find and then get those out into the hands of students. And yes, we do a lot with faculty as well. We're trying to help them, but in sort of this limited fashion. For instance, Dragon Naturally Speaking, we have that in our office. So if that was something you wanted to use and we had access to it, we could give support. Yes.
So some of the things that Avid provides for faculty, we can use as points towards the merit plan, right? As in bumps or as in actual points. I mean, is that true? And
The folks who came to the Avid training are eligible for bumps as they apply the training in the classroom.
very good,
Yep.
very good. So
Yep.
it's the in-person training. You don't have any individualized trainings for individuals to do on their own that will count toward.
That would have to be negotiated with the merit plan committee,
Mhm. Okay.
faculty development committee.
Okay.
Who will be coming in next session.
Good.
And we also, we have 4 days that we have available to us each year. So we've just used 2 of those days the beginning of the year. So we have 2 more days. Actually, we have 4 because we negotiated
Right.
we have 4 days left that we are going to have professional development from Avid here at some point during the school year. So that's going to happen.
Very good.
Which is to say we pay for this.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got a really tight schedule. We've got a lot of good things to learn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you. This is Diane Kurtz. who I mentioned Laura, I was just taking my agenda, the old one. Diane runs our international relations, but it specifically She manages the whole process of taking our campus students abroad. As you know, or I hope you know, included in their tuition is the cost of a basic trip to a foreign country. And if they want one of the more expensive countries, it's a little bit more, but it makes it feasible for every single one of our campus students to participate in a major cross-cultural experience. So they study the country for a semester, and then they go for 3 weeks with faculty, and then they debrief on the experience. So, Diane.
And how long did you want me to be engaged?
Well, I actually
What
thought
time?
Tom would be here by now, so
Okay.
go for it.
All right.
Okay.
So some of you were already, I'm coming over here because I'm assuming the camera's over here. Hi. So you can hear me. Oops. Some of you were here in August, and I already passed this stuff out. And Kimberly asked me to come back and have a little bit more time with you. So I know, Carol, you were not there in August. Who else was not there in August?
I was not.
Katie wasn't here. Were you here in
I was
August?
here.
You were here? You got that early.
I was here.
Okay, well done.
So, yes, cross-cultural studies is to take our students abroad, our campus students abroad, and help them become more global citizens and get cultural competent. And so our 1 credit core, what used to be called core is now COL 274, is the preparation for going abroad, and it's a generic course across all the destinations that we're offering. So each student is going to be looking at how to study a culture and what is cultural competence, and how do we gain that in theory. And then going abroad is the framework on which they can hang the skills that they learned in Core 274 and how to study a culture and how to experience a culture and come alongside people that are different from themselves, and do so without being arrogant and losing some of our American tendencies to think we're the best thing that ever happened. So
The ugly American.
yeah, and so the 3-week study abroad program is in January and in May, and it's led by our SAU faculty members. And the jurisdiction of the program is by the Faculty Cross-Cultural Committee, and they meet regularly. Sherry's been meeting with us as ex officio on our committee. And so this magazine is produced and put in the mailboxes of all students who have not fulfilled their cross-cultural requirement yet in February. And then we have an event in mid-February where all the professors are up in the Ralph Carey Forum, a big international fair, helping students know where are we going next year and what options could I select from. And then the students enroll on their option for the following year. And then they continue to enroll if we have spots available. So as you're advising students, students need to go their junior year, or typically after they've been here for 5 full semesters, they're eligible for what we call the CCS benefit. The CCS benefit is accrued over 8 semesters typically, but we know that students need to accomplish this course before their senior year because it's the prerequisite to Core 400, so, or COL 400. I've been here 25 years, so changing it from core to COL COL is, you can't say coal. So anyway, it's a change in our words. Anyway, they sign up and then they go. With another option is they can go on a semester abroad, and some of them will do the COL 274 before they go on semester abroad, and for our own Guatemala semester, they do it in country with Paul Nemechek, who, by the way, is going to be here at the end of September through 2 weeks in October, and he's available to speak in your classes and would like to meet with you. And I know if you guys are in nursing, we've been talking to the nursing program about Guatemala semester and the fact that some of our students could be getting clinical things. I think Kim Bowen, our chair of the World Language Department, talked to the hospitals and clinicians in Antigua, and because of the Catholicism of Guatemala, they don't do abortions there unless it's the life of the mother or rape or something like that. So I think those kinds of things for your program are going to come together eventually for some clinicals abroad. But what we're studying when we're going on the 3-week, or the students are fulfilling their 275, COL 275, as a part of a semester abroad, we're looking at culture through the lens of 5 lenses: government, economics, education, family life, and religion, or religions, main religions of the country. So, Tom's here. So our course is systemic, delivered no matter where you're going, the same course, but it'll have a little nuance, like if you're studying Russia versus Japan, you'll have some differences. So our goal is that students would be able to go anywhere and be culturally competent in their future. So it's not about studying just about Japan, and that you're not going to be an expert in 3 weeks on Japan by any means, but you'll have dipped your toe in the water beyond our borders and get a little bit more skill for actually going anywhere, or living beside or working beside somebody that is different than yourself. So those are our course goals, and you as faculty members are invited to get involved. One of our faculty members from August has already put her application in to be mentored. So this notebook is, how do I get involved as a leader? How can I become a cross-cultural leader as a faculty member? And I would invite you to come and talk with me, and I'll be happy to talk about ideas, and where have you been, what do you want to do, and how can we send you abroad and help you internationalize your curriculum as well. So there's a cross-cultural program, but then there's a lot more of globalization going on at Spring Arbor, where we can send you abroad to maybe in your discipline, to do presentations at conferences or other things that might be a conversation to have, or teach like Mark Edwards is going abroad to South Korea with the Fulbright program, and I'm going to be teaching in South Korea for a semester. So there might be opportunities that are available to you that would be very interesting. All right?
Well, Diane does a remarkable job in all of this, but I'd like to make 3 points. One is, this is relatively unique. We go to a lot of conferences with other colleges, and very few have this requirement or have figured out how to make it possible for their students. So it's a very, very special opportunity. Secondly, I don't know if Tom's going to interject into part of our idea about the community of learners as part of our Gen Eds is that our students gradually engage a broader and broader world.
Yes.
And one of the major reasons for going abroad is not only that you can be an acceptable tourist in the future, but that our students recognize the skills that they're learning here are things that they can have confidence applying in a broader theater than they would have considered otherwise. And just the idea that something that you learn in the middle of Michigan is going to work in Cambodia, that you actually have value to add to the people there, that's transformative for our students. We could tell you lots more stories, but we won't. And the third thing is that we are working, or we have the aspiration to work toward a cross-cultural option for our online and site students. We're doing kind of a little bit of a test bore on that. A couple of our faculty members have put together a trip to Germany and Switzerland for next summer, partly to reach out to our alumni, but also it's kind of a test to see if we put together a relatively shorter trip, can we still get value out of that? We realize that our working students can't go for 3 weeks.
Right.
And so our intention is to provide something equivalent for our students off campus. So Diane's in the middle of all that. She's a tremendous resource, and her office has great jewelry.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
African jewelry for sale,
Which-
helping
which-
widows.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Ms. Spring.
Thank Appreciate it.
And Tom's one of our best cross-cultural leaders.
You're too kind. Yeah.
We had a great adventure.
We have had some great adventures for sure. Thank you.
That's what it is.
Tom, if you'd come up to
Sure,
the camera,
sure.
in effect.
I will. Let's see.
Yes.
My-
Tom Holsinger Friesen is in religion, but is here in his capacity as the new director of CPLA, which I can never get right.
Christian perspectives in the liberal
Perspectives
arts.
in the liberal arts.
It's not easy.
No, which is the committee that oversees our general education and our community of learners courses. So understand that the liberal arts is something we intend to have undergirding all of our programs, even our graduate programs. This is going to influence what's offered at the sites as well. So I will turn it over to Tom.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So, welcome. My name is Tom Holsinger Friesen. I was in your shoes 12 years ago, and time really flies. But I've got to say, Spring Arbor is a fantastic place to learn and grow, and I thank you for your forbearance. I have a couple of future Spring Arbor students here, but Samuel and Leah, sometimes our logistics get a little bit complicated. But so just, I guess first off, just a hello and an introduction. I teach, and we have some folks on the line. Hello, you're Camille? Yeah. Yes, I'm Tom, nice to meet you.
Who's on the phone?
And we have one other person on the phone.
Who is mute at the moment?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, so,
You're back?
hello?
Okay, anyway.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you just a brief overview of what we do in CPLA, Christian Perspectives in the Liberal Arts, but my office is in the theology department, which is in the basement of Whiteman Gibbs, and would love to chat with any of you if you have any thoughts or want to get involved in any of these courses. So I'm a bit of a first semester freshman with this, in starting as my in the role as director of CPLA. We have a committee. It's a faculty standing committee with members from most of the areas, at least the different pathways. I'll talk about that in a second. But we also have a chair, a separate chair, and that's Robbie Bolton, who's also involved with Focus. You'll probably hear quite a bit about Focus Day coming up in the spring. It's every February, typically. And all of our kind of normal academic and other activities kind of get put on pause for us to come together as a community. This is a tradition that goes back a ways to hear some speakers that we bring in, as well as have workshops on a given topic. And so I believe this coming year's topic is on Christianity and nationalism, and some different perspectives on that. So if you're interested, you'll probably see an email from Robbie asking for folks that would like to step forward and put together a workshop or a presentation. And our hope is that we can draw from various different areas. And of course, there are incentives in terms of the merit plan and bumps and that kind of thing, but it's a very worthwhile event. So we're also breaking some new ground here in terms of our curricula, and so this handout that you have gives us some graphics, and I'm stepping in with, standing or sitting on some broad shoulders. Folks that went before me, Jack Baker especially in English, helped spearhead some significant changes to our general education and our core program, and just because there's some change in lingo in that, I might just try to clarify. When you hear the term core, what we're referring to is not just the 4 courses that you may have heard in the past, Core 100, 200, 300, 400, those are now COL, Community of Learners, and on the back of the last page you'll see those. I'll get to that. But the core includes those 4 plus actually cross-culture, so 6 classes total. But it also includes the general education. And so this photocopy didn't come through terribly well, but if you can see the roots of this tree, each of those 4 different areas representing one of the planks of the Spring Arbor concept, our mission statement. So on the left we have Community of Learners. On the second from the left, the book, The Lifelong Study of the Liberal Arts. And then to the right of that, Jesus Christ as the perspective for learning. And then finally, critical participation in the contemporary world. And so the way that the core program was originally envisioned is that each of those 4 courses, for right now I'll kind of put to the side cross-cultural since you heard about that, but COL 100, 200, 300, 400 emphasizes one of those major planks. And you can still see vestiges of that emphasis, with community being a strong emphasis, an intro to the liberal arts, an introduction to college for our COL 100 freshmen, and then ending with the capstone course, COL 400, and looking at community to come, what's after Spring Arbor, and how might we engage our contemporary world from a Christian perspective. So the concept represents our roots. The trunk of the tree stands for our common general education. And this is something that, well, as advisors, you'll probably hear students talk about, well, of course, as soon as I get my gen eds over with, then I can move on and study whatever I want. And that's understandable in a sense, but we do believe that we at Spring Arbor have something distinctive to offer. And so these general education courses have been specifically tailored, and we're in the ongoing process of evaluating that to be essential. They're not just courses to blow through till you get to what you really want to study, but you do see perhaps in the tree metaphor, the branches would represent the different majors, and then they're grouped into our 4 different schools: education, arts and sciences, human services, and school of business. The fruit itself we could envision maybe as the students who are prepared to be lifelong learners and to continue to grow. The cross-section of the trunk shows how we see the general education courses. You can see COL 100, and I could refer to the back page here. The back of the last page, table C. Students are welcomed into our community, and one thing that I do think is going to be especially helpful with some of the new changes is we're connecting study with virtues, and so you can see some of those virtues that are going to be particularly emphasized. With the COL 100, we do have 2 directors, 2 co-directors. Dave Hopper is the faculty co-director, and Carrie Williams is a co-director from the student life, student success side. And together they work to put together a program that will be certainly academic and introducing them to the liberal arts, but also involves some crucial experiences that they have in common. I'm sure you've heard of Cedar Bend, or the time for these core groups to go out into the woods and forage and build some common community. But we also have other experiences that are planned, a church visit, some debrief of other experiences. This has been a course that in the past has been distinctive to Spring Arbor. And at the same time, we don't want to just rest on what we've always done. So this coming year, we're going to be putting together a COL 100 task force. If you have interest in this, we would certainly welcome you. Let me know. But we're going to be examining, what we've done in the past and now what needs to change or tightened up or added. We do have a speech component. One of those 3 credit hours is assigned as part of their speech requirements, so we do have that involved. And the course experiences give them plenty of workshops to kind of practice, so to speak. And Dr. Rupert, feel free to jump right on in here at
Well,
any time.
I'd like to interject something.
Mhm.
Because off campus, we have primarily dealt with degree completion programs. And until very recently, our online programs, again, were either degree completion or graduate programs. The folks who managed those developed different points of entry for our students. So one of the challenges we're going to be dealing with this year is if the COL sequence, formerly the core sequence, is what brings all Spring Arbor students together and gives them the Spring Arbor flavor. Okay. What does that mean for our students who transfer in, for the increasing numbers of students who come in with advanced credit, or for our students at the sites? And particularly as we are looking to the possibility of offering 124 bachelors at the sites. And if, for the degree completion students, we already have an introductory course called IDS 300, is that a model we bring back to campus for transfer students, or does that need to be rethought? So all of that is part of this rethinking. And we're spending so much time on it because this sequence of courses, and particularly the freshman course and the cross-cultural experience, are things that our alumni remember, that they see as very distinctive. We don't want to lose that in the midst of everything else that we're doing. And it's helpful to use those platforms as a way to remind students more broadly of your arenas. So that one of the things we brought into the last year, the Core 100 course, now the COL 100 course, is we actually have the opportunities for the disciplines to be presented to our students. Because we have a significant number of first-generation students. We cannot assume they know what's involved in sociology, for example. They may never have heard of sociology, so how are they even going to consider that as something to study? So we're trying to introduce them to what you'll see on here is the liberal arts pathways. We're also trying to introduce them, as Willie talked about, to the basic skills of the liberal arts. I'm taking up too much of your time, I apologize.
You're fine.
But I was just up lobbying, as I mentioned to the crowd, and talking about what legislators and employers are particularly asking for. And what they're asking for is graduates who can communicate, who can collaborate, who can approach problems from multiple perspectives, who can exercise critical thinking, who can not only be analytical but synthetic, bring things together, make them work. These are the kinds of experiences we're trying to give our students through our whole Gen Ed core approach. We're giving specific courses with respect to skills of communication, but by laying out the pathways, the specific liberal arts disciplines, we're going to be looking for good communication occurring within each one of those. And in particular, if I can run through the 4,
Sure.
is that all right?
Yeah.
For each discipline, for each pathway, what we've asked the discipline
And
to
this
define.
is, sorry, this is actually table B if you're
Okay.
interested in following along.
This is what we asked our departments to explain to students, and this is why we explain to students it's important to know this discipline. The first is the scope. What's the range of questions and material that discipline investigates? Okay. What's the difference between chemistry and music? Okay. What's the scope? Okay. The second thing is terms of discourse. Now that's a fancy word for saying what's the basic vocabulary you have to understand to even begin to talk and think about this arena. So what are the critical notions, ideas, vocabulary that you need to have to play around in this exciting discipline? The third thing is the means of analysis. Now, this to me is very important. Every discipline exists in part not only because it has a different scope, but because it has a different way of reaching truth. An historian is going to have a different methodology from determining what is true from a chemist. And our students need to know that there are different techniques, there are different means, and that they all contribute to our total understanding of truth. I discovered the other day that the analogy of the blind man and the elephant no longer works. Okay? Does everybody know what the blind man and the elephant is about? This is an old story. Blind men approached an elephant. One grabbed his leg and said the elephant is very like a tree. Another one patted him on the side, says an elephant is very like a wall. Another grabs his tail and says an elephant is very like a rope. Another one gets the ear and says an elephant is very like a fan. Somebody else says his trunk and says an elephant is very like a snake. Everything they said is accurate, but it doesn't tell you anything about an elephant. So what we're trying to say is that everybody has some way of looking at their portion of truth so they can understand what falls within their scope, but we need to bring the whole thing together. So there's a subliminal message in here to our kids. If you are confronted with an issue in future, think about the many parameters, the many ways in which something can be analyzed, and the things you can grow from. And finally, who cares? What's the significance of your discipline? What is it contributing to humankind and to our individual students? Because what prognosticators tell us is that the people who graduate from college today are going to go through 7 different careers during their working lives. Okay? So we have to give them the skills that enable them to transition, to be curious about new areas without being afraid of them, okay? To say, I know enough about that I can learn more, because they're going to be expected to learn more. So that's part of what we're trying to accomplish. And I took over and I apologize.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
I was just gonna get to that, but you did it better than I could. So I do wanna, just as an FYI, this is the first year that we will be rolling out, or we are rolling out the pathways, this particular structure. Now, a lot of the courses, most of them are not brand new. There are some new courses and there will be new ones coming out. But if you're advising students, students are held to the catalog in which they entered, but this structure is new beginning this fall. And so with the pathways on that second page, table A, which is front and back, I won't go through them all, but you can kind of see the COL courses, and then biblical studies, liberal arts skills, and there is a possibility, something that we're working with right now is the subject of foreign languages, because given who we are as an institution, our values, and given the why can't I think of the name of it? The board's strategic plan, yes,
Okay.
all right, lost me. So the strategic plan does call for us to emphasize languages, especially foreign. So at any rate, you may see some changes, more than likely, with perhaps a requirement there. Liberal arts pathways, here you see the different pathways and the options that are currently available for students to choose from. But I would like to put out a plug there that if in your department you have an idea for adding an additional course that could be a pathway option, at CPLA we are very interested in listening to you. There's a process by which you can go through and apply to have a course from your department added to the approved list for the pathways. So it's our hope that we'll see some additional options added there. So
if I can
Please.
interject.
Yeah.
This is the first major revision of our general education in 30 years. And we're just now figuring out what we just agreed to. CPLA is charged with figuring out what the criteria are for a course to be included in each of the pathways. But just to give you the notion, that's why I went through the 4 characteristics. Because if you come up with a course, even though it seems unusual, in which the student learns those 4 critical things about that pathway, it will be considered. Okay? Now, we'll figure out what that means, but one can imagine a course in anthropology of music, okay, which tells a student something about how sociology works. And if the criteria that people have defined, those 4 areas of sociology, can be addressed by that course, it would be considered. Not necessarily automatically approved, it would be considered. The other thing that's happened is for nursing in particular, we are looking at opportunities to, and this will apply to other professional programs as well, we're looking for opportunities to see courses that are required by your accreditors that can be included or tweaked slightly to meet these 4 characteristics so that they could accord with our liberal arts pathways. So this is very much a work in progress, but it's very exciting. I will say one other thing and then I'll shut up, which is that we are trying very hard not only to think about our professional and our graduate program within a faith perspective, but also within a liberal arts perspective. And how is the discipline different? I will say something that I can probably be corrected about, but for example, one of the reasons that hospitals are now looking for BSNs rather than simply RNs is that additional layering of broader perspective, liberal arts perspective, makes their nurses more effective, gives them the skills to contribute to the improvement in healthcare for the patients that they're serving. And it's that extra little something that we're trying to bring to all of our programs. We have been approached by companies in trades, hardcore trades. One of them which is not welding, so I'll use welding, okay? Where people have come to us and said, we've got welders who think are capable of more. Can you give us a liberal arts-based program to enable them to see their profession more broadly? That they can weld, but they might even be able to invent something new. Or they might be able to move into management in our company if they had a slightly broader perspective of what they can bring to the party. That's what we're trying to accomplish in the liberal arts. That's the platform we want to provide to our students going forward. So when you are teaching your course within your discipline, if there are ways of emphasizing these 4 areas and kind of pushing your students a little bit to say, now, it may seem strange, but how would you look at this differently since you're studying chemistry? Okay? Or since you're studying chemistry, what does that have to do with a current political issue? That's where focus comes into play. With focus, what we try to do is to bring to bear on the individual issue something from a variety of perspectives. In addition to focus, and I don't know if the honors folks are still going to do this, but honors used to sponsor a day in which they had a topic, and I remember one notably, I'll tell you my contribution later, about the problem with drugs. And we had somebody from business talking about the economics, we had somebody from biology talking about the health effect, we had somebody from sociology talking about the social devastation, we had somebody from political science talking about how difficult it is to legislate, etc., etc., etc. I was invited because I'm old enough that I was in high school when the drugs hit. So I got to tell stories of my friends who never made it out of drugs. I wasn't sure that was a great contribution, but the point is that if you take any significant problem that our students are going to be participating in as critical participants in the contemporary world, bringing all of these perspectives to bear is going to make them much more powerful. advocates for Christian values in society and better solutions. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with this.
Absolutely. And so for 2019, the focus topic will be on chaos. And we've got, it was Tom Kunzelman's idea, so you can see some connections with science, but I think you can see all sorts of options there, chaos and order. I do find it an amazing blessing to be a part of a Christian liberal arts institution. One of the things that we face is apathy in our students, and unfortunately, but I think helping them make some of those connections, many of them cross-disciplinary, can be extremely meaningful. And so it's a great opportunity. Just real quickly to go through and show you on the back, COL 200, Community Place and Responsibility. In the past has been more focused on sociology, but like Dr. Rupert said, there are opportunities for all sorts of other options there. Typically, students are taken to either Chicago, inner city, or Detroit, and that is a weekend experience there. COL 300, Community and Christian Tradition, will be the place where they will get some specific help in understanding the Christian theology. What do we believe and why? So the Apostles' Creed, the Spring Arbor University Statement of Faith, and then with Community of Learners, Community to Come, is a bit more of an interdisciplinary, various different perspectives, although we do have some learning objectives and outcomes that are now formalized. I also want to put out a plug there that if you're interested in teaching any of these courses, please do see me. I would love to see new faculty get plugged in. I know it's not always possible given the loads that you have, but if you are interested, let me know. It's a really wonderful way. These are some of the most fun courses to me because you get students from all different disciplines and provides a diverse, rich environment. So that is the main substance of what I had to share.
Can I throw in a couple more things?
Yeah.
With the COL courses in particular, because we are looking at how to make them more robust, if you will. Think of it this way, the first course is, this is college, okay? This is a different community than you probably grew up in. What I think is fun is we take the folks from the inner city and take them out to the woods and they hear hooty owls and they freak out, but it's a way of saying, hey, this is where a lot of people in the world live. So if you've heard about killing the chicken, the idea of killing the chicken is to say, we lead very sanitary lives in America. We don't know where our food comes from. So let's know where our food comes from 90% of the world. Then the second year is kind of fun because we take the country folk who are making fun of those city people who are freaked out by being in the woods, and we take them to the city. And we say, here's a diversity of culture in our own country. Okay. And we can deal with it. We learn how to deal with it. Right now in Core 300, we deal with a diversity of worldviews, a diversity of mind, and say, what you think about as ultimate reality affects how you live your life. We want to be very clear that our students leave here understanding what the Christian faith is. We don't require them to accept it. We want to make sure they've had a clear statement of it. And we also try to introduce the notion of what is different in the Christian faith from other worldviews, and how do we navigate that? How do we, a little bit of apologetics gets in there too, so that our students can have confidence in what they do believe, and that it does make sense, and you have a place to stand in a wild and woolly intellectual world. And then finally, in COL 400, how am I going to operate in the broader world? So it's kind of like an opening up of a flower for our students. That's what we're trying to accomplish in those courses. And again, although we may specify what we want to accomplish, that is not a barrier to people from any discipline participating.
Questions?
He's got a huge job. Yeah.
I'm just discovering. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.